Eclipse season continues with the total solar eclipse in Aries on Monday, April 8th. The eclipse conjoins Chiron and Mercury retrograde, and some painful words may need to be said in order to process the pain and move forward. My mantra for this eclipse is, my past does not define my future. Let's take a closer look and break it down for all 12 signs. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you like my content and enjoy my work, please take a second to support me by leaving a like or a comment, subscribing, and pressing the notification bell. It encourages YouTube algorithm to show my content to more people, helps me grow. You also have the option of saying thank you by buying me a coffee. I really appreciate every single one of you who takes advantage of that. Before we dive in, if you're feeling like you have important questions, if you want to understand yourself better, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Natal chart is great for like a general understanding of yourself, and solar return is best done around your birthday. Year ahead reading can be done if you want to know what's coming up for you. There is a variety of options that you can find on my website. In the shop section of my website, you can also find the creations. Astrology is fascinating, and just like a birth chart for a human, you can create a birth chart for an object. So using my knowledge of astrology, I carefully select times to highlight powerful planets. And for example, this is my latest creation, Venus in Pisces. I call it Exalted Venus because that's what it is. This was created with Venus on the ascendant. The moon was waxing, growing in Taurus, and this is beautiful for anyone who wants more love, who wants soul-centered connections, abundance, tenderness, and who's seeking to attract the right partner in their life or to improve their current relationship. It has the ocean scent, very refreshing, called High Tide, and it's decorated with aquamarine stones. The color, as you can tell, is green on the outside, green on the inside, to connect it to Venus, because Venus is connected to green and aquamarine is one of the stones. And this is also a perfect way to remediate if you were born with Venus in more challenging positions. That is Venus in Virgo, Scorpio, or Aries. If your Venus is in the dark house, 6th, 8th, or 12th. And if it's making difficult aspects like a conjunction to Saturn, square opposition to Saturn, square opposition to Mars, or difficult aspects to Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto, because then your love life might be a little bit more unpredictable. Additionally, since we are in Mercury retrograde, you might also benefit from my Mercury in Virgo or Mercury in Gemini candle, because this one was created with Mercury in the sign of rulership. It can help you find clarity, express yourself more accurately, and not get lost in the challenging, confusing retrograde energies. You can find this on my website, and also highly recommend this to anyone who's born with a Mercury in Pisces or Sagittarius, the signs that are ruled by Jupiter, where Mercury struggles with clarity and conciseness. So let's talk about the eclipse. It's a big deal. We had one eclipse on March 25th. We have survived it, right? Let me know what it was like for you. So this is our second eclipse, and we are starting to slowly clear out the eclipse season. So while I'm filming this, we are right in the smack in the middle of it. So I'm curious how you're feeling, how you're doing. What was your experience like with the Libra eclipse? Did any relationship tensions come up? Did any chapters close in your life? Please let me know. Now we are having a total solar eclipse. I think it might be actually seen in the parts of the US. Please let me know if you know exactly where it will be seen. Astrologically, it's not normally recommended to look at the eclipse because eclipse just has this like karmic scales weighing energy, and you don't want to be the subject. Let's say there's some like negative power in the air. So I personally wouldn't be looking at the eclipse, but you know, you're a free human being. Just this is my 2 cents. So it's a total solar eclipse. It happens at 2:20 p.m. Eastern on Monday, April 8th, and it's happening at 19 degrees 23 minutes of Aries. So really important for cardinal signs. If your rising sign is Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, you are the stars of this eclipse. If you have any planets or angles Angles are ascendant, descendant, IC, MC. Between 16 and 22 degrees, Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. This is extra, extra important for you. Eclipses are big in general, right? This is a solar eclipse. This is a new moon. It's like a new moon on steroids. It's not a new moon to manifest during because of that karmic energy. It's the new moon that brings new beginnings based on the results of your past actions. So new things are happening, but you're not necessarily in control here. That's why when you try to manifest, the results will be more unpredictable. So you can sort of chillax around this eclipse. And it's interesting because there is a lot of kind of slowing down energies with Mercury retrograde, with Mars conjoining Saturn, which I'll talk about in a second. But before that, just know that the solar eclipse is a really big new moon. It's a major new beginning in your life, a big reset. This is our second solar eclipse in Aries. Funny enough, there is no lunar eclipse in Aries in this Aries cycle. So Aries, being the first sign of the zodiac, only brings us solar eclipses. Aries is all about like no endings, just new beginnings. Isn't it crazy, right? Like we had a solar eclipse in Libra in October 2023, then there's a lunar eclipse in Libra in March 2024, and then another solar eclipse in Libra. With Aries, we're just getting solar eclipses. That's how you know it ended up shaking out, because the lunar eclipse we're getting in September in 2024 is actually in Pisces because of how close the node will be to Pisces. But I digress. So this is the second solar eclipse in Aries. We had an eclipse in Aries on April 20th, 2023. What was happening in your life? Have you initiated something new? Have you become more aware of the issues of independence? Have you taken a risk of some sort? Have you gotten in touch with your spirit, with your true desires, with your motivation, maybe some kind of drive? Maybe you've taken a physical action. Maybe you've explored a new passion. So this is the second chapter in that story. And then we will have one more solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th, 2025. That will be once the nodes shift into Virgo and Pisces, but the eclipse will still be in Aries. So you are very much still on this path of taking action, asserting your independence, reinventing yourself, acting alone, acting with courage, taking risks. Those are the main themes. In general, we are in this kind of place of, you know, North Node is in Aries, South Node is in Libra. So there's a lot of tensions between Mars and Venus, a lot of tensions between me as a person and us as a relationship, right? Like me versus us, my thing versus harmony, feminine energies and more receptive energies versus masculine energies. And the focus is quite heavily towards masculine energy, especially at the time of this eclipse, especially with North Node and Aries. North Node is hungry. North Node is driven. So there is a lot of kind of material goals and action and strong independent energy. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can stand in your way. If somebody's trying to control you or limit your freedom, limit your kind of independence, they're more likely to encounter aggression within you, even if you're not someone who normally shows aggression. And that is the energy we're in, right? Eclipses are big portals where things change, but collectively this entire year and from July 2023, this is where we're at. It's impossible to hide. It's impossible to act peaceful. Of course, not in general, right? But it's like, I'm born with this energy, by the way, so it's my nodal return. But I think collectively, many people are feeling like they can no longer deal with sort of people pleasing. They can no longer play a certain part. They need to be authentic. They need to be truthful. They need to express themselves. And this eclipse has some really important lessons coming with it. So it conjoins Chiron pretty exactly, because the eclipse itself is happening at 19 degrees 23 minutes and Chiron is at 19 degrees 24 minutes. So how crazy exact is that, right? And Chiron in astrology is the wounded healer. He has the wound that starts at birth. He's rejected by his father, Saturn. he gets raised by Apollo, the sun. He becomes enlightened and he starts making poisons and making potions. And one day while he's teaching Hercules how to fire a poisonous arrow, he ends up shooting himself in the foot. And so the story of Chiron, the wounding of Chiron, sometimes is self-inflicted, right? Because we can choose to think certain things. We cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose how we react. And it's not easy because we all have these pathways, these like highways in our brain that we've been going over again and again and again. So it's hard to rewire our brains. It's hard to change things, but it's not impossible. And so, with Chiron and that like self-inflicted wound, and then he struggles for a long time because he cannot die. He's immortal. So he's like wounded permanently. And the way he heals it is by sacrificing himself and giving his life for Prometheus, who is the one that stole fire from the gods and brought it down to earth. So there's multiple lessons hidden within Chiron. There is a lesson of kneeling to your wound and sacrificing yourself for a higher purpose. There is a lesson of taking your focus away from the inner pain to focusing on the others and something bigger than yourself potentially. There's also a lesson of that like self-inflicted wound and sort of stewing in the pain, right? So I think when it comes to the eclipse, we are encouraged to not run away from our wounds, to lean, to kneel to them, to accept them for how they have shaped us, because every wound is so powerful because it makes you so much more sensitive, so much more caring, so much more kind to people around you. It gives you, I feel like no good healer becomes a healer without first facing some pain. So Chiron gives this opportunity to address the pain. The eclipse also conjoins Mercury retrograde. So talk about the pain, process the pain. You may encounter some painful conversations, but also calls you to acknowledge that your pain is part of who you are. It's part of being human. It's part of your gifts, right? It's not something we like always try to heal and we try to escape the pain and we try to escape discomfort, but like it's part of life. When you are, incarnated into a human body, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get sick, you're going to catch a cold, you're going to stub your toe. Pain is here, and pain is beautiful because it is a sign of being alive. So it's like a very kind of contradictory energy with this eclipse, because on one hand, you may feel discomfort, you may feel sort of hurt and frustrated and in pain, but then on the other hand, there's also like huge strength, and coming out of pain can be like deep realizations, deep new beginnings. So with Mercury retrograde, with Chiron, I feel like you're very much looking at the past, you're addressing, you're bandaging your wounds, and you're getting ready to move forward. Like I said, my like mantra, my affirmation for this eclipse is my past does not define my future. My pain does not define my future. If anything, it only like strengthens and helps. So another important thing to talk about here is that the ruler of the eclipse is Mars conjunct Saturn. So very kind of the energy of like slowing down, of sitting down, of dealing with frustration. So it's not looking like a fun eclipse, right? Eclipses are rarely fun, but I think when there is like the ruler Mars conjoining Saturn, you're almost like put in a timeout where you have to sit down and face your feelings. And chances are there might be some kind of frustration happening in the Pisces section of your chart that then calls you to address the pain, to address your patterns, to address your feelings and understand them better. Let me know if you have any insights about last eclipse. What do you think you're learning? What do you think you're growing through? What do you think your gifts are? And how has your pain and trauma has actually shaped you to be a better human being? I'm curious, right? And let's talk about the rising signs. So if you are in Aries rising, there's a solar eclipse in your first house, together with Chiron, together with Mercury retrograde. And the ruler is Mars in the 12th house. So with Chiron and Mercury, you are facing some pain. You are maybe addressing some insecurities you have. And a lot of it can be connected to your image that you think you're meant to project in the world. So the eclipse in the first house could be an opportunity to examine that image and to embrace vulnerability and to perhaps use your skills to change who you are. But like it's very sensitive, right? It's very tender, and there is like potentially like insecurity and pain that comes around this eclipse that has to do with who you think you're meant to be, who you think you're like, what do people expect from you? What kind of like this idea that you have to be independent, the idea that you have to be strong, the idea that you have to be a certain way. And perhaps with the ruler being Mars in the 12th house, you're very much shedding the old image of yourself. You're reorienting yourself, and maybe it's uncomfortable for you, maybe it's painful, maybe it requires redoing some work or retracing your steps, right? With Mercury retrograde, maybe it requires to let go of the old idea you've had of yourself, but through that ability to address the pain and release the past, you can rediscover yourself and you can bring back a new version of you that has roots in the past, right? It's like, how can you accept the experiences that have shaped you and use them to be stronger, and stronger doesn't mean like physically stronger, it doesn't mean like impenetrable wall, but it does mean that you can use the pain you've faced and apply it to healing, to giving to other people, to helping other people. The eclipse in the first house can also be very much reflecting, taking you back to things you once wanted, to things you have put on the back burner, and giving you an opportunity to change your look, to change your style, to bring back like an old idea, to bring back the old wardrobe, to bring back old project, and to even bring back something connected to your health and take better care of your health. But very, very like strongly, I feel it's about self-acceptance. I feel like it's about being kind to yourself, being nurturing to yourself, even like talking about yourself and what you've been through in order to rediscover who you are becoming. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to talk about it more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have Taurus rising. If you are a Taurus rising, there is an eclipse, a solar eclipse happening in your 12th house. And it's conjunct Chiron and it's conjunct Mercury. So much light is being shone on your 12th house. So much attention, right? And so much sort of nitty-gritty energy is going towards healing, because 12th house is the place of release, letting go, endings of some sort. So you're maybe cleansing yourself somehow. You're maybe something like, like you're closing an old cycle. There's like a new beginning here, but it's also very much about the ending. Something needs to die. And the ruler is Mars in the 11th. So what is dying is maybe your old role in the collective. Maybe it's your old friendships. Maybe it's your old relationship to social media, or your kind of idea of yourself. It could also be that you are addressing your bad habits. You're taking care of your mental health. You are taking a step back to retreat, to heal yourself, to tend to yourself, to sort of wrap yourself in a blanket and to bandage your wounds. Breakthroughs in therapy are quite likely around this time, because 12th house is the place of mental health and spirituality and healing. I can also see you with this eclipse really taking ownership of your vulnerabilities with Chiron and your fears, and knowing that it's okay to be afraid, but it's still important to move forward, and taking action in spiritual realm, becoming like, South Node is in your 6th house, and you are changing professionally. You are changing in terms of being the one who works really hard, or being the one who wants to be a certain way, wants to be approved of, and going more towards parts of yourself that are authentic and truthful. And so with the solar eclipse in the 12th house, with Mercury retrograde, it's something that you have likely maybe toyed with, played with in the past, but haven't given a full chance to. But there might be a project you're bringing back to life, some kind of spiritual project. There might be a spiritual new role that you're taking, an imaginative project that you're dedicating yourself to and giving, like with Mars in the 11th and Saturn also in the 11th house, you're committing to your dreams, but you're also committing to something that will spiritually help the collective. So both kind of healing, releasing, addressing your self-defeating tendencies, but also using your knowledge and using your resources and your insights and maybe even your experiences of pain to help other people is quite likely here. Let me know how this resonates. And if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have the beautiful Gemini rising. There is a solar eclipse in your 11th house. It's conjunct Chiron and it's conjunct Mercury retrograde. So this is interesting, right? There might be some conversations around this time with old friends. There might be some reflection on old dreams and maybe a sense of sadness because you feel like what you've wanted to accomplish hasn't quite panned out. So I can see a little bit of I can see a sense of nostalgia for what could have been, and maybe a sense of pain for some dreams that you haven't pursued and dreams that you haven't explored, because you're both addressing the past, but you're also with Aries, you're thinking about your identity. And so the eclipse here, because it's all about new beginnings that have root in the past, to me suggests that you are kind of encouraged to accept that things that haven't happened for a reason. Maybe mourn and release the loss of some future version of yourself or some old version of yourself. There may be changes in your friendships, changes in your connections, changes in your social life. But ask yourself, what is the driving force, right? What have you learned? What can you do still that will bring you close to those dreams, right? The dreams don't have to pan out exactly as you want them to go, but they can be modified. So I feel with solar eclipse in the 11th house, you're instead of thinking that your losses define you, you can use your losses or your vulnerabilities to actually help other people and heal other people and become more relatable, right? So the solar eclipse in the 11th house could be about finding people who feel as lost as you are, connecting with others, helping others, doing work professionally that maybe, if you're struggling in your own career, there's nothing that's stopping you from helping other people figure out their career. So it's how can you heal yourself by healing other people and by taking care of other people? And the ruler is Mars conjunct Saturn in the 10th house, so there's very strong professional themes and maybe professional frustrations. And so there's almost an invitation to not wait for other people to approve of you, but instead redefine yourself, redefine what makes you happy and go for it without being shy or apologetic about who you truly are or what you truly want. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading with me at my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have the lovely Cancer rising. If you are a Cancer rising, this is a big deal. There's an eclipse in your 10th house of career, status, reputation. The ruler is Mars in the 9th. The eclipse is conjoining Chiron, Mercury retrograde. So here you're looking at your professional life, and there's big new beginnings here. But the new beginnings that may be somehow painful, that maybe require you to look back, that maybe require you to take a risk. The ruler being Mars and Saturn in the 9th house brings up the topics of education, brings up the topics of travel, writing, publishing, legal matters like law career, or career of someone who works with diplomats, someone who works with international people. So on some level, you are very much looking back at the things that you once considered, and maybe you're getting ready to take a leap of faith to explore something, to change something. There might be some pain around career. There might be a sense of dissatisfaction. There may be a sense of disappointment, right? The Chiron here could be a sense of I've done so much for people, why don't they appreciate me? And I would invite you to not see this as a source of weakness, that you've done a lot for people and they haven't appreciated you, but instead the confirmation that you're capable of greatness, you're capable of doing a lot, and perhaps focusing on what you still can do. Where can you go? You know, what can you accomplish? And a lot of times, if you're feeling lost professionally with the retrograde here, with the eclipse, the Chiron here, focusing on other people and how can your work be helpful to other people, how can you heal other people, how can you uplift other people, can take some of the pressure off of you and can encourage some change. It's also very independent energy. It's a very risk-taking energy. So if you feel not recognized, not appreciated at a job, in a marriage, the invitation here is to take that risk, to go for that, starting a business, right? To figure out a new chapter for yourself and to be the one who writes that book and writes that story instead of waiting for other people to do it for you. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have the lovely Leo rising. The eclipse is happening in your 9th house. It conjoins Chiron and Mercury. Mercury is the retrograde planet at the time. So the eclipse in the 9th house, in conjunction to Chiron and Mercury, can bring up some insecurity, some wounding, some kind of conversations and issues surrounding education, surrounding travel, surrounding legal matters, maybe, you know, immigration status, some kind of like problems around that, and maybe some matters that you're dealing with, some matters you're addressing. Some also kind of like 9th house is very much about your beliefs, about your philosophy, about your place in the world. And the ruler is also Mars in the 8th house. So you are asking, who can you trust? Who can you rely on? Who's in your corner? Who's supportive? And so with Chiron here, there might be some kind of insecurity. There might be self-doubt. Maybe you're doubting your ability to succeed. Maybe you're doubting your ability to be the person who's like a travel influencer or a writer, and you're feeling like you don't have the resources, you don't have the connections, you don't have the money that is needed to make your dreams happen. But it's an eclipse that I think invites you to slow down and to not rush into things, even though Aries would want to rush into things, and kind of take a step back and rethink and ask yourself important questions, right? With the Aries eclipse, there might be an invitation to figure out how you can do things independently, how you can do things on your own. If something is not working out in your life, if something is taking longer, it doesn't mean it's a no. It means that you need to maybe rethink your approach and revisit how you go after things. This eclipse could be very much taking you back to something you once looked at. So it could be a great time to take out your old notebooks and start writing a new story that is based on the old story. There might be opportunities to go back to school and start studying something. Maybe you're figuring out how to pay out your student loans and to maybe like even close a chapter with education. You're maybe figuring out where you're belonging, right? And with Mercury retrograde in the 9th house, there might be an invitation to go back to the place you once visited, the place you once lived, the place you once called home, and find a sense of belonging there. More than anything, I think here it's like an invitation to look at things differently, because the Chiron energy in the 9th house could suggest a certain like fear and doubt and vulnerability and a sense of, lack of confidence in terms of achieving your dreams. But instead of focusing on the no's, try to focus on the yes, and try to focus on sharing your energy, sharing your gifts with other people, because you want to help other people. So it's both a very self-driven eclipse because it's Aries and it's about you, but it's also about how can you take your ego out of the equation and maybe use your knowledge, use your courage to help other people. So it's very spiritual, but it's also quite literally could have to do with education, travel, writing, legal matters, having to redo, having to rethink, having to rewrite some of the things. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasia.astrology.com. If you are a Virgo rising, there is a solar eclipse in Aries in the 8th house, and it is ruled by Mars in the 7th house. So the eclipse in the 8th house, it conjoins Chiron, it conjoins Mercury retrograde, and you're very much looking at the resources. You're looking at agreements, at questions around exchanges of energy. And you may be addressing some vulnerability there. There might be a sense that you feel like you have to be independent, you have to be self-reliant, you have to always stand on your own 2 feet and have enough money, have enough sort of self-respect, and just always kind of handle things on your own, because the 8th house is the place of like surprises and finances and dependencies on other people, and Aries is like, no, I'm gonna do it on my own. And so with Mercury retrograde and Chiron here and the eclipse energy here and Mars being in the 7th house, there might be some opportunities to rethink those things and to welcome help from people who want to help you. You don't have to be fully reliant on them or fully dependent on them, but it doesn't hurt to have people in your corner. It doesn't hurt to ask for help sometimes, right? Like, let's be honest, Virgos want to be right. They want to do things on themselves, on their own. So with the eclipse here and the Chiron here, it's almost like a suggestion that being vulnerable doesn't take away from your strength. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to other people. So the eclipse here could suggest a new chapter in your life where you're starting to rely on other people, where you're starting to trust other people. Maybe you're moving in with your significant other and they're taking care of the rent and you're accepting that and experiencing a new chapter in your life. Maybe you're starting a business partnership and accepting help from your partner. Maybe you're closing some kind of financial chapter. Maybe you're also paying off a debt and somebody is perhaps offering your help. Very much transformation when it comes to relying on other people. Also a lot of energy of healing, healing of oneself, but also healing of other people, where you can use your vulnerabilities, even your knowledge about resources, to help other people, and maybe starting new relationships and new partnerships that take some of that old pain and old insecurity and old sort of, I can do it on my own, and help others. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasia.astrology.com. Next, we have the lovely Libra rising. For you, there's a solar eclipse in your 7th house, and it's a big deal. It's a relationship house, right? It's the place of one-on-one connections, partnerships, contracts. Solar eclipse suggests new beginnings here. Chiron can represent healing the old wound. It can represent vulnerability. It can represent uncomfortable, painful conversations where you are, let's be honest, for some of you, this will be perhaps about ending a relationship and choosing yourself in a relationship. If you are in a toxic relationship and things haven't been going well, you may go through a painful conversation and choose to part ways. For others, it could be about being honest and talking about your desires and talking about your feelings and talking about your wounds and being direct about where you're coming from. So not the easiest energy, right? But I think out of facing shadows, out of facing painful experiences, you can actually grow quite a lot. If you're single, this could be the time you're feeling very lonely and you're feeling isolated and you're feeling maybe misunderstood. And there is an opportunity here to get kind of clear on what you want and what is it exactly that you're missing. The ruler is Mars in the 6th house. So the ruler is taking us into the house of service and work and health. So for some, the suggestion will be that perhaps in order to build the relationship, you need to be ready to work, right? You need to commit to one another, and you need to accept that things will not always be easy. For others, there may be a new professional chapter opening. 6th house rules work, rules hard labor, it rules pets, animals, short animals, small animals, pets. So there might be some kind of new partnerships, some kind of new beginnings that are maybe connected to that, connected to your commitment to the task at hand, to the work that you are interested in. So serious kind of questions, important conversations around relationships that then forward you into new beginnings. And new beginnings can be about choosing yourself, and so that letting go of a relationship or choosing yourself, but like getting ready to work on things and committing to something, both professionally and personally. Let me know how this resonates, my beautiful Libra risings. And if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have the beautiful, magical, mysterious Scorpio risings. There is a solar eclipse in your 6th house, and the ruler is Mars in the 5th house. So the eclipse in the 6th house, it conjoins Chiron, it conjoins Mercury retrograde. It looks at your work life, it looks at your health, at your sacrifices, and there might be a sense of some kind of painful conversations at work, maybe some kind of painful realizations, maybe a sense of not being fully appreciated, a sense of sort of vulnerability. And this vulnerability can actually help you get stronger. The Chiron Mercury conjunction really reads to me as like difficult conversations, painful conversations, acknowledging something, you know, talking to your colleagues, talking to your boss, bringing up things that are frustrating, things that are maybe bothering you, and working through that, right? There might also be with Mars ruling the eclipse, conjoining Saturn in the 5th house. There might be work that involves your pleasure, your creative sort of creative impulses, your creative projects. There might be work that involves parenting that feels difficult at this time. There might be work that involves love, because love is not always magical and romantic and like romantic comedies, right? Love can be complex and difficult, and it goes through ups and downs. It goes through death and rebirth. So with the eclipse in the 6th house, you are on some level healing from something, but you're also committing to things. You're maybe committing to being a parent, committing to a relationship, committing to a creative project. You're having to work through difficulty with patience. You're also coming up with new ways of doing work, right? It's a new moon, it's a solar eclipse. Yes, Mercury is retrograde and it requires some element of redoing, rethinking, looking back at old ideas, but it's very much like a fresh burst of energy, a chance to reinvent yourself, reinvent your career, to go at it on your own. You don't have to, you don't have to have approval of people. You don't have to have them pat you on the back and tell you, yes, do it. You can take a leap, you can take a risk, you can start doing something like become an astrologer instead of studying about astrology. You can publish your website. Don't do it during the retrograde, but you can like start building your website, right? So it's almost like take the frustration, take the pain that is represented by Chiron, and look at it as a gift and see ways you can use this pain, this knowledge, this gift to do what you want to do independently on your own, and perhaps focus on helping other people, because if you do that, you're less sort of absorbed and self-deprecating and sad, right? So a multi-layered lessons here. If you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Sagittarius rising, there's a solar eclipse in your 5th house, and the ruler is Mars in the 4th house. So this eclipse is interesting. It's fascinating because it conjoins Chiron, and it also conjoins Mercury retrograde. So there is a need for vulnerability here. There's a need for honest conversations. There's a need to address the past and to not shy away from pain and from difficulty, right? You're maybe talking about children, you're maybe talking about love, you're maybe talking about pleasure, what is pleasure, right? And as a result of facing the uncomfortable and talking about uncomfortable, you can actually grow and you can get closer with a partner, for example, because like new moon solar eclipse represents new beginnings. So it represents like a new chapter. And of course, like, Mercury Chiron conjunction and the solar eclipse in the 5th house could be a conversation about children, where you and your partner realize you're not on the same page, or you realize that maybe you don't want to have a child, but you can adopt a child, right? So there's opportunities for like growth through difficulty, through challenge, through honesty. There might be romantic developments that come out of having also like honest conversations, getting on the same page. The ruler is Mars in the 4th house. It's conjoining Saturn. So I wonder for some of you if maybe you're going through a difficult chapter at home. Maybe your parents need you more. Maybe there is some kind of like heavy matters you're addressing, moving, selling a home. And so as a result, there's been like a sense of lack of connection between you and your partner, or even like a sense of like a lack of play, a lack of joy, a lack of pleasure. And so this eclipse will encourage you to look back, to retrace your steps, to reflect on what has brought you joy in the past, to maybe revisit your childhood, and to find ways where you can have fun, where you can take risks, where you can prioritize yourself, even in the middle of the more difficult chapter in your life if things feel difficult. Or if they're not, maybe you're just learning to have tough conversations in relationships and to not shy away from being honest and direct. Maybe it's a tough conversation with your child because the child is moving out or moving on and you feel there's a sense of pain, but by them moving away, you will have more freedom and more time to explore your passions. So it doesn't have to be the end of your life. It's just the end of a chapter. Let me know how this resonates. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have Capricorn rising. Capricorn rising is another cardinal sign. The eclipse is happening in your 4th house of home, family, and living situation. Conjoins Chiron, conjoins Mercury retrograde. And I wonder if here there's a sense of some kind of ending, some kind of closing of a chapter and sadness connected to it. You're maybe reflecting on your home, a place you lived in for a long time, a place you got attached to. You're maybe thinking about the past and your family, or maybe healing some kind of wounds. This is very much like look back at the past, talk about the past, reflect on your childhood. And there might be a sense of like your childhood wasn't quite the way you want it to be. There was like a lot of restriction, or family creates a lot of heaviness, a lot of difficulty. But Aries is new beginnings, right? Aries is fresh energy. So if you're saying goodbye to a home, perhaps you're about to move into a new one. If you feel like your childhood and your family life wasn't quite the way you wanted, perhaps there is a chance to start your own family, or choose family members that are like your chosen family if you don't have a happy relationship with your biological family. There is an opportunity to reinvent comfort, to focus also on giving comfort and being sort of like, if you feel like you don't have the support you need yet, or you don't have the home that you want, try to focus on like creating that home around you and maybe creating a beautiful setting, or focus also on making other people feel comfortable. And like I said, being that hero, being the character that creates comfort and creates ease and peace for other people. But very literally, the retrograde happening simultaneously and the ruler being Mars in the 3rd house, you may be moving back to a place you once lived, a place you once visited, a place you once considered moving into. You may be dealing with some home renovation issues. Chiron could come up from like, you don't get the wallpaper you wanted, or you don't get the carpet you wanted. And it feels sad, but you need to pivot and adjust. And very much like this feels very healing, honestly. This feels like an ability to reflect on the past and accept that whatever happened, and that you have control of your future. Please let me know how this resonates. And if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, we have the Aquarius rising. If you are an Aqua rising, there is a solar eclipse in your 3rd house, and the ruler is Mars in the 2nd house. So the solar eclipse in the 3rd house, conjunct Chiron and conjunct Mercury retrograde, could suggest some unpleasant conversations. The conversations might involve your roommates, your neighbors, your siblings, but also many other people. I feel like there's a need to be direct. There's a need to not shy away from difficult topics. There's a need to maybe bring up something from the past. And because the ruler is Mars in the 2nd house, it can be connected to money. like your roommate borrowed some money and never paid you back. It could be connected to values, like you really prioritize sleep and silence, and your roommate, neighbor, sibling, they kind of like having loud music playing all the time. So there is a chance to communicate about something uncomfortable, and through moving through that discomfort, bring in more security within yourself, more confidence in your knowledge, more confidence in your beliefs. There might also be new beginnings in business, new beginnings in your skills and your knowledge that perhaps have an element of like reflecting on the past, maybe finishing something from the past, maybe having to retake an exam and rewrite something, redo something, reconsider something. But we're very much connecting the house of like skills and knowledge and communication to the house of money and values, and whether it's about you using your skills and your talents to make more money, or it's about you standing by your values and almost like embracing your values in order to start a new chapter in your life, right? Like maybe face fears about starting a business, but actually start a business. To even like start driving, because third house could be about driving too. So somewhere you feel like insecure, you feel afraid, you feel like maybe you don't know enough, but you're going for it anyways. Or you're, if there is some kind of rejection you're facing, if like your business failed, the first business didn't work out, it doesn't mean that you're done and over. It just means that you can rethink it and do things differently. Aries doesn't give up. Aries is like the little kid that sits down, cries, but then picks up and goes back at it again. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Last but not least, Pisces rising, lovely Pisces rising. There is a solar eclipse in your second house. It is ruled by Mars in the first house. The eclipse conjoins Chiron and Mercury Retrograde. So the ruler being in the first house is very much about you. It's about your physical energy. It's about your physical body. It's about your health. It's about your goals, your dreams, your initiative, right? And so the ruler being Mars in conjunction with Saturn can suggest that, I really need to start with Pisces sometimes, because by the time I get to you guys, I don't have any moisture anymore and I need to drink more water. But yeah, like Mars, Saturn can honestly create some kind of a sense of like hard truths and hard realizations about your health, about your wellness, about your time, about your priorities. Maybe you're realizing that time is not limitless, your health is not limitless, and you need to cut something out of your life, you need to prioritize something. And so the solar eclipse in the second house is very much about your values. So it's about values, it's about resources, right? The presence of Chiron could suggest a need to work on confidence, on believing in yourself, because Chiron in the second house can create a sense of insecurity. It could be connected to money, where you're limiting yourself because you feel like you're not going to make enough money and you're finding all these reasons not to do something. And Aries will have a brave energy that will encourage you to actually go for it. There may be difficult conversations you need to have around things that are important to you, around resources. Maybe you're talking to your significant other about your priorities and having to really be, it might be painful for you because you are Pisces rising, you are caring and kind and generous and like sensitive to the needs of other people, but there is some kind of pull to be direct and be independent. And even if it ends up hurting someone or if it hurts you, it's still better to be honest and be direct and be expressive. With Mercury retrograde here, you may be having some old fights, you may be addressing some old debts, paying off some debts, clearing your finances, figuring out a better way to manage your finances, but definitely some kind of element of like discomfort, uncertainty, fears that you first have to move through in order to have more financial stability, in order to have relationships in which you're on the same page. Do not hesitate at this time to consult a financial advisor, to do some research, to figure out what really kind of what better ways there are to do business, to gather resources. And do not just, I think like the big question here is like, how are your resources connected to how you feel within? Because based on your trust in yourself and your confidence in yourself, your money will likely improve, right? So do not just focus on improving your finances, but focus on thinking better thoughts. And so a lot of times the financial abundance starts with like positive affirmations and happiness within. So it's this eclipse is an opportunity for you to work on increasing the way you feel about yourself, and to saying that no matter how much pain I've been through, and maybe I'm wounded or vulnerable or hurt or struggle with life, no matter how difficult that is, I can still change myself, I can better myself, I can reach success. Those two things are not contradictory to one another. I hope you have a great eclipse. If you want a personal reading, you have questions, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Pick up a candle. Moon in Cancer 2 is great. Venus in Pisces, just for Pisces rising, is good for everyone, but definitely check out my website. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a good eclipse.